Briahna Joy Gray and Cenk Uygur had what was supposed to be, from what I understood, a discussion, and it definitely turned into a debate. And there's so many things I want to say about this. We're going to look at different pieces of this discussion here. But I do want to start off by saying this for those who may be wondering, why did this happen in the first place? From what I understand, there was a couple weeks ago, you guys maybe remember, I talked about it on this show. Cenk Uygur called Briahna Joy Gray a fake leftist. That's what really got the ball rolling on this. And so from what I understand, Bree said she'd be interested in talking to him about why he feels that she may be a fake leftist or whatever. And I watched this, and I have to tell you, it was very painful to watch. This discussion went exactly the way that I thought it would. I think that Bree went into this discussion to try to somehow, I guess, bridge this divide or close this divide on the left, right? And it was very clear to me during this discussion that Cenk Uygur had no intention of that actually happening, which is exactly what I predicted before I watched this discussion here. So there are certain parts I want to talk about. So let's go ahead and get started here.
Or who's first or anything like that. I think the goal should be for us to come together and try to figure out the best way strategically to go forward. But it's difficult to do that when people are so bogged down in their interpersonal animuses. And that's part of why I wanted to come here today to really talk about why it is that there seems to be so much negative energy.
Yeah, so
let's talk about that for a second. The part where she said there seems to be so much negative energy. That's true. We've been talking about that on RBN. We've been talking about that on this show as well. There's a lot of negative energy on the left. And what I have said in the past is that I think the negative energy is there because we're no longer together on the policies. People are now together on personalities. So it's now about who do you support as a personality versus what are the policies that you can get behind. And that's what has happened. That's what I've seen happen in this space as someone who watched a lot of independent media on the outside and as someone who came into this space. I have seen that divide. I saw it when it first started to happen around the time of Force the Vote. So she's here to basically tell him we need to find a way to bridge the divide. Cenk automatically comes in hot on the mic. And it was very clear to me that he is not trying to bridge any type of divide. It is very clear to me that Cenk Uygur is one of the people that I was talking about when I told you that there are people on the left, or I don't know if you want to even call them left now, but there are people who claim to be a part of the left that are only focusing on the personalities, and Cenk is one of those people. So let's go back into this discussion.
But we have to break that down because I'll tell you exactly how the history of that went. So Jimmy, at the time, we're still friends. No bad blood has happened at all, other than old stuff from TYT. And at the time, I didn't know the old stuff from TYT. So he calls me up, force a vote. I say, okay, that's, as a general thing, forcing a vote, perfectly great. On Medicare for all, perfectly great. Then later, I ask, hey, we're gonna force it, and then what happens? Like, who is there a progressive that's going to run against Nancy Pelosi? Because if there's no progressive, what are we doing? Making Hakeem Jeffries the Speaker of the House? What earthly difference would it make? He's just as conservative as Nancy Pelosi. And Jimmy didn't have an answer for that. None of you ever have an answer for that. And we're gonna hold on. Let me explain the whole thing. And then, okay, we're gonna go for Medicare for all. But wait a minute, there's a ton of things that are lower hanging fruit. And if you're gonna go and do a spectacular force to vote, that's a big action. Let's try to get something that we can actually get. Medicare for
Okay, there's two things I wanna say here. Number one, when we talk about force the vote, that strategy comes directly from the DSA handbook. I've seen it myself. And so when you have a lot of these progressive politicians come from DSA, like they're DSA members, right? They should be following the strategy in that DSA handbook. So I think for people like Cenk, when he asked the question, well, what comes after that? If he would have just read the strategy in the DSA handbook, he wouldn't have had that question. So the idea is that you can continue to force the vote. If they would have forced the vote against Nancy Pelosi being speaker, and there was this misconception that meant that McCarthy would become speaker, McCarthy's on the Republican side, that actually was not true. That message was spread from TYT, from people like Cenk, and that wasn't true, and that was debunked. And so there's that part of it. But the idea was that they could continue to keep forcing the vote. They could have been forcing the vote for months and still saying, no, we're not going to vote for you, Nancy. No, we're not going to vote for you, Nancy, until you do this. No, we're not going to vote for you until you do that. If you also notice, Cenk said, why can't we focus on getting the smaller things done instead of something like this, which is really big? And that right there told me everything I needed to know about Cenk Uygur. He doesn't really want to go for the big task. He wants to go for something that's small that he knows for sure is going to win. He doesn't want to go for something that may or may not work. That's not a fighter. That's someone who wants to do just enough so that they can say that they did something and that you don't have to now push back against like the progressive members, because we can say, well, they did these things. And he doesn't want to go for something that is more difficult to do, something that is a bigger task, because if it does not work in the end, then you have no choice but to say, well, this didn't work out, so what do we do now? He wants to do something that he knows for sure is going to win. And this is something that I have noticed about certain people in this space. Certain people who they don't really want to do the hard work. They want to do what's easy. They want to do what's going to benefit them. They don't want to try to do something difficult. That's not someone who is a revolutionary. That's not someone who is a radical. And I think that's the big difference between the people who want reform and the people who want revolution and want complete systemic change. Let's go back in.
Is not even on the agenda. I hate that it's not on the agenda, but I know what's doable and doable and not doable. And at the time, idiots like Aaron Monte are, oh, $15 minimum wage, that's already in the bag. We don't need to do that. And I'm like, wait, if you guys are gonna be juvenile and you don't know how any of politics works, and you have no earthly idea how in the world you're gonna get Medicare for all to pass, let alone things like $15 minimum wage, and you don't have an alternative to Pelosi.
This is exactly what I was talking about when I mentioned sometimes people on the left can come across kind of condescending to other people. When he makes this comment, if you guys want to be juvenile and you don't know how politics works, that is part of that leftist attitude that I've seen sometimes that really rubs people the wrong way. I feel like you're talking down to people when you say things like that. And for people who are not in academic spaces, for people who are not, maybe not on the left, but they're curious and they're interested, for people who may be working class, for people who may be poor, that is a turn off. And this is the rhetoric that you hear a lot of times, that I've heard a lot of times on the left. There's a difference between talking to people and talking at them. So that's not a way. Basically, what he was saying, long story short, he was basically calling them dumb. That's what he was doing. You see? Let's go on.
And why am I wasting my time? But I didn't say that publicly. I said in a very gentle way, I don't think this is a good strategy. Then Jimmy blows up and goes nuclear and attacks us viciously for no goddamn reason. So when he does that, don't come at me and say, hey, there's a personal animus issue here. Well, you're in that fight, your ally came in and nuked everyone. Everyone, Ryan Grimm, David Sirota, the best progressives in the country. He nukes them and he goes, whoa, what's with the personal animus?
Why is he talking to her about things that Jimmy Dore said instead of talking to Jimmy Dore about those things? I don't understand what he expected to happen here. Like, why not pick up the phone? I mean, come on. We know at one point Jimmy and Cenk were friends. They both worked at TYT. Why not just pick up the phone and have this conversation with Jimmy yourself? Why are you asking her why Jimmy Dore said what he said? Remember, the conversation is supposed to be about bridging that divide on the left and them discussing why he called her a fake leftist. That's what it's supposed to be about. But it seems to be about Jimmy Dore.
So I am not accusing you of having personal animus. I think it's an accurate description. You called Aaron Mate an idiot. You've had your feelings about Jimmy Dore out on the table. I personally would prefer not to make those characterize people that way. I don't think that that's helpful. Obviously, you can do what you want. I can't control that. But I am articulating what I experienced, and I experienced a lot of animus, and I experienced it as animus when you referred to me as a fake leftist. I have never had any kind of negative interaction with you. I've never feuded with you privately or publicly. I've never said anything negative about you on the internet. So I thought it was pretty hurtful.
You talked with Jordan. You talked with Jordan about how we changed our politics at TYT based on.
Is that not true? They did change their politics at TYT.
What? And change it to what? Change it from what?
I don't remember. Truthfully, so a lot of people come on my show and they maintain, like I confess I'm not a long time TYT viewer. So I would never say something like that, I don't think, because I don't have that perspective. Other people do come on my show and they say their opinions. And other people, I think like Jordan has been in this universe for a much longer time than I have. He might have had the view that there's been a shift, and he's a guest, he's entitled to his opinion. I don't really have anything to say about that one way or the other. But I would like, if we can, to keep this conversation focused on us and whatever your concerns were about me, since you're the one who called. I mean, I don't mean this accusatorily, I'm just trying to unpack this. You referred to me as a fake leftist, and I reached out to you about having a conversation about it because I didn't want this to explode, and I'm really unhappy with all of the disputes that have happened on the left. I wanted to clear the air and be able to have a direct conversation with you about whatever your concerns are about me. And I think it might be more productive to talk about our relationship now here, as opposed to all of these other issues that you have with other factors and other people that I can't speak for.
Yeah.
But he can't do that, Bree, because he has Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome. He can't do that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I have more to go into with this, but I'm gonna be honest. I don't feel like this conversation was genuine. I really don't. I think that Cenk had this conversation to bring views over to TYT. Let's just be real. And I think he gets worse with this, but I feel like he was performing. I didn't feel like he came into this with good intentions and to actually bridge some type of divide. What I got from the impression of watching this was that it seemed like, to me, this was just a chance for him to perform, to be an actor, the actor that he can be. And I think he wanted to bring views over to TYT. I think that's what this was about for Cenk Uygur. I don't know what Briahna's intentions were or what she expected to come from this discussion, but I did not expect much to come from Cenk Uygur. Just being honest with you. But I appreciate her trying to make the effort. But I think we have to remember who is paying Cenk. We have to remember where they're getting their money from. They're pretty much corporate owned now. So I just did not expect anything good to come from Cenk in this discussion.
So I agree with that. But again, the flow of the conversation is forcing me to say one last thing about the personal animus point. Look, Briahna, I'm trying to give you an earnest answer. So when Jimmy said horrible things about how he sexually harassed Anna, But even if you put that aside, and I don't know why on God's green earth you would put that aside.
What does this have to do with Cenk Uygur calling Briahna Joy Gray a fake leftist?
And he then accused everyone of work getting funded, including us, by Nancy Pelosi and the CIA. When Sam Cedar and Jimmy Dore were both part of the network, Sam and Michael Brooks, who I love, would attack Jimmy all the time. And I told them, don't do that. You're bringing needless personal animus into this. We've got to stick together. We agree with the issues. Don't make it personal. And I wouldn't even, and as much as I loved Michael, and now I honestly, looking back on it, regret it, I wouldn't have him on the show as long as he kept attacking Jimmy, because I didn't want the personal animus. So, and I give you that as an example of me regulating on that, and with the guys that I love, Sam and Michael, right, who's now of course passed away. Okay, so so I know for a fact if Jimmy was saying, hey, Briahna Joy Gray is getting funded by Nancy Pelosi and might be working with the CIA, I'd say, Jimmy, you're massively out of bounds. And I'm not gonna work with you, and I'm not gonna be your ally in any goddamn thing as long as you keep saying these insane, lunatic things. So that is what led me to believe that you were aligned with fake leftists. So I'm answering the question you were asking.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that's what led him to believe that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna tell you what I think this is really about. I don't think this is really about Jimmy Dore's comments in reference to why he called Bree a fake leftist. I believe that when it comes to this strategy of putting progressive through the Democratic Party, the Justice Democrats, whoever you want to call the people today, I believe that that side of the left who still believes in that strategy, people like TYT, people like Majority Report, people like Kyle Kalinske, people like Crystal Ball, like all of them, they really, having like someone like Bree on that side with you, that holds a lot of weight because she was Bernie Sanders' press secretary. So that's someone who was there fighting for the progressive candidate. Recently, there has been a shift. And you guys know, last year, we talked about this at RBN. We've been talking about this for over a year now, that we need to just leave the two-party system. We've been telling you guys this. And when we have been doing that, as we started to grow and we started to get more attention from some of the bigger people, we were told that we were nihilists. We were told that we're bad faith actors because basically we were telling you the truth, but they don't want you to hear it because they still believe in that strategy. The shift that you see happening now, I have noticed past couple of months or so, now you have someone like Briahna Joy Gray who's also losing faith in that strategy. It was one thing for us to say it. We didn't work for Bernie's campaign. I mean, some of us canvassed for Bernie Sanders, but we weren't his press secretary. But I think a telling moment was when they had that panel where it was Crystal Ball, Katie Halper, Briahna Joy Gray, Marianne Williamson, Juliana, that panel where they were promoting progressive candidates that were running, and all of the audience feedback, they got a lot of negative comments after that panel, because I think that was kind of a wake-up call to even them that people won't want to do this anymore. Like, this is kind of done because the squad has just been so terrible and Bernie Sanders left his movement, right? But even after that, they were still promoting progressive candidates, maybe not as heavily as that panel, but they were still bringing them on and stuff like that. But like I said, there has been a shift. So when you have someone like Briahna Joy Gray, who was Bernie Sanders' press secretary, and now you see her going on to shows, or whether it's on Rising or on other people's shows, and now she's saying it. Now she's telling people that there is no movement. Now she's telling people that I don't think this is going to work. Now they have a problem. Because if you remove Briahna Joy Gray from that equation of putting progressives through the Democratic Party, that actually says a lot, because that was Bernie Sanders' press secretary. And it's a bad look for the people who still want to do that strategy. It's a bad look for TYT. It's a bad look for Majority Report. You guys see what I'm saying? You're following me here? So they can't have that. So what do they do now? They're going to smear her the same way they smear us at RBN. They've been smearing us for over a year. Over a year. And not just on commentary, on activism. They've been smearing us on mutual aid. We did a general strike summit. They smeared us over that. Anything that we were trying to do to help people in the community, they smeared it heavily online. We have the receipts. But the difference was, we are not obviously as well known as Briahna Joy Gray, and we were not Bernie Sanders' press secretary. So if you have someone like Bree come on these shows and tell people that there is no movement, that says a lot. What does that do to that Justice Democrat strategy? So they're smearing her the same way they're smearing Jimmy Dore. I believe that's what this is really about.
To be just really clear, because I didn't insert myself into an argument that you and Jimmy were having.
You kept backing him over and over again.
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I keep backing Force the Vote. I believe in Force the Vote. And I'm going to continue to back that kind of adversarial politics until the day I die, whether Jimmy supports it, whether someone else supports it that you might not like, whether someone I respect deeply like Cornel West supports it, and Chris Hedges supports it, and Crystal Ball supports it. All of these people were supporting this idea. And what was frustrating to me.
And if you notice, when you hear people criticize Force the Vote, they don't mention those people. They mention Jimmy Dore. As if all of us who watched that town hall just magically forgotten that there were other commentators that were a part of that and support for Force the Vote as well. Just keep that in mind, because we all know everybody loves Cornel West. Do you hear Cenk Uygur smear Cornel West for having that same support for Force the Vote? No, it's only Jimmy Dore. Why is that? Just keep that in mind.
Was how unable people were to engage with it on its substance, in part because they were so caught up in the ad hominems with Jimmy. So again, I can't speak to any of the stuff that you just talked about. I don't know who's funded by who. That's none of my business. I choose to judge people about the content of their opinions on the policies that I care about. And so with respect to Force the Vote, I was frustrated with some of the backlash against David Sirota. I was also frustrated with David Sirota coming out of the gate a little timid on the issue, but I reached out to David Sirota. I talked to David Sirota on my show and his, and we worked it through, and I addressed all of the concerns he had about Force the Vote. And he ended up being one of the best advocates for Force the Vote and engaging, because we engaged and we were able to add to the idea and say, you know what, the part about the Medicare for All is a largely performative vote to get the issue discussed in the context of this pandemic. But what concrete asks could we make? And David Sirota was instrumental in coming up with some of those asks, like getting Richie Neal off of the head of the Ways and Means Committee, like getting the PAYGO exemptions, which although there's a lot of discussion about how the squad did get those, that wasn't in fact the case. And he enriched the idea because he was able to participate in the conversation. And
I'm sorry, I do have to add this in here. David Sirota is not a fighter either. I'm sorry. You can put him on that same side over there with TY. He's not a fighter either. He's not there to fight.
I'm so grateful to him for that. And Ryan Grimm and I, despite having a lot of disagreement over this issue, were able to have a private conversation where we worked through our differences. He came on my show in bad faith. He was able to acknowledge some missteps that he had made about not pushing back in an interview that he had with Pramila Jayapal when she gave as an excuse for not doing Force the Vote. And remember, he's the only one who got an actual an interview with a squad member about this. And when he asked her why she didn't support Force the Vote, she said because Kevin McCarthy could be Speaker of the House. Ryan Grimm knew that wasn't the case. He didn't push back at the time. He said he regrets doing that. We were able to make our apologies and move forward with our relationship. And I value Ryan deeply, again, as my former boss and someone from whom I've learned an enormous amount on the left. So I hope that a lot of people, including you and I, potentially maybe someday, I don't know, none of my business, you and Jimmy, people like Aaron, I think they all add to the left and are very valuable.
No, they do
and
not add to the left.
I'm sorry, Cenk, but when there's so many big dragons out there to slay, to spend all of this energy and have all of this anger worked up against people who care about Medicare for all, who care about a $15 minimum wage.
Let's talk about this for a second. You notice he said no. So she's trying to tell him that basically she would like to see them have a conversation again one day. Jimmy Dore, Aaron Monte, all of them. He immediately starts saying no. I told you, he never had any intention of bridging this divide on the left. For him, it's all about the personalities. Once he decides that he doesn't want to, you're not cool, you're not on board with his strategy, you're a bad person. Now, say what you want about those individuals, but when it comes to policies, for the most part, they usually agree on the policies. He is not willing to look at that because he is upset with the actual person. So he said, no, he's not willing to have those conversations with them, but he's willing to continue smearing them. That's why I knew there wasn't going to be much that came from this discussion in reference to bridging that divide and moving forward or coming together. It wasn't going to happen because if Cenk Uygur wanted to have those discussions with Aaron Mate or Jimmy Dore or Max Blumenthal, whoever else he's smearing lately, he would do so. These are individuals that have been on TYT before. So I'm pretty sure he has their contact information. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't intend on doing it. This was just another chance for Cenk to come in and show off, get views over at TYT. Because I told you guys before, just because you have a lot of subscribers doesn't mean that your analytics are great. And I've shown you guys that on this show. So this was just a way to get more people to come over to TYT and for Cenk to perform. He had no good intentions here. I don't buy it.
No, they don't. Briahna, this is my
point
point to you. This is what I'm trying to get across, okay? So now those forces are spending 98% of their energy backing right-wing talking points, backing Tucker Carlson, backing Donald Trump, backing the Republican Party, never, ever, ever criticizing them, spending all their energy attacking.
That's an exaggeration. I wouldn't say that they never, ever criticize them. I've seen them criticize people on the right as well. And also, again, what are the right-wing talking points?
Nina Turner and David Stroda and Ryan Grimm, the best progressives in the country, and the squad, the only people who are not taking corporate PAC money, the only people that are even trying a little bit, and they spend all their energy doing that, and you go, oh, they're great leftists. No, they're not. And they're getting, literally some of them, like Glenn Greenwald, are getting paid by Peter Thiel through Rumble. They're getting paid through their right-wing Patreon support.
Who are you getting paid by? How is Cenk gonna call out people getting paid by Peter Thiel through Rumble, and you literally accepted $20 million from Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was also friends with Nancy Pelosi, by the way? How are you going to talk about who someone else is being paid by? Really? This is laughable at best.
So when you aid and abet and you make it seem like, oh, when Jimmy tells you that the real problem is progressives and not Republicans, that he's on the left, you're helping that deception.
Well, Cenk,
actually, I would add this. Yes, you should hold all politicians accountable. Here's the difference between the progressives and the Republicans, other than the policies here per se. The progressives told us they would fight for those issues. They told us that they would fight against the Democratic establishment. The Republican candidates did not tell me that they were going to fight for Medicare for all. They didn't tell me they were going to fight to cancel student loan debt. They didn't tell me that they were going to go in there and fight against the corporate Republicans. No, nobody said that on the right. So yes, we can still criticize the Republican politicians as well, but the anger obviously is going to be directed more towards the squad because they sold us a bag of goods. They got a lot of money from us. I donated a lot of money to them. A lot of people canvassed for them and phone bank for them. They sold us a lot of goods and they did not deliver. So of course you should criticize them more. That's my response to people who say you guys don't criticize Republicans enough. Last time I checked, none of the Republican candidates told me they were going to do any of those things. Come on.
One, you should really talk to Jimmy. I am not a ventriloquist dummy for Jimmy Dore. He, I'm sure, would be open and happy to talk to you. I just cannot speak for other people, and I really wish you would respect me enough to engage with me as the human being that's sitting in front of you, and not asking me to speak for these random men who I'm not accountable for. I'm not their mom. I'm not in league with them or in allegiance with them. I respect them for the ways that they advance the issues that I want to advance and protect. And when I disagree with them, I disagree with them about the specific issues that I disagree with them on, and I don't make it personal. And I think that's really good advice for everybody in this community.
Yeah.
Now, if you
his body language to me kind of reminds me of childlike behavior a little bit. Rolling the eyes, doing your head like this back and forth. It comes across as childlike.
Want to ask me specifically?
Yes.
I do think that they are, depending on the issue, there's a lot of really good faith engagement happening. So I don't see it, and I respect that you obviously see this differently. I don't see critiquing the few people that we have that are in positions of power to actually advocate for us as attacking them or trying to bring them down. When I say something like the progressives in Congress, because of the narrow margin in the House, could have had any number of force the vote moments over the course of this last 18 months, that they could have. You mentioned the $15 minimum wage. During force the vote, when AOC said to Justin Jackson that she was going to reserve her political capital for a $15 minimum wage, part of why I didn't have quite the same reaction as Jimmy. I was very frustrated, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't quite willing at that point to kind of go all in on the fraud squad characterization. Because I thought, well, maybe she knows something that we don't know, and maybe when the time comes, she really will, and they will, all of them together, I don't mean to put it all on her, but all of them together will vote as a block and hold up must-pass legislation like the American Rescue Plan to make sure, if not a $15 minimum wage, something significant that was on the cutting room floor got into the bill. They all had the power to be the mansions and cinemas of the left, right? And when that moment passed and didn't happen, when no one really called out the parliamentarian trick in stripping at 15 from the bill at the time, when Pramila Jayapal was reported to have whipped the votes to make sure the Progressive Caucus did not, in fact, hold up the bill to fight for the issues that we sent them to Congress for, I think it's absolutely incumbent on us to call that out and push them to be better. Because if they're not fighting for us while they're in there, if they're not maximizing their ability to use their leverage for the most vulnerable people in this country, I don't know what they're there for.
Exactly. And that's what we've been saying. Why are they there? At this point, to be careerist. They saw that money, they saw the benefits, they're all set, they're good. That's why they're there. So again, they could do the same thing that Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin do, but they're not going to, because they know that would not make Democrat leadership happy. And that could cost them basically their next primary races. That could cost them. They can primary people against them. They can throw in big money against them. Now, if you weren't worried about being a career politician, that shouldn't matter to you, but they are.
So Briahna, every time I try to get to talk to you about you and about policy, you say something that's maddening that forces me to clarify. And then we get back into the same muck. Okay, so in this case, two things. You framed it as, I don't know, holding people accountable is not attacking them. Okay, so let's be very clear on what we've done and what the definitions are. We have held those same individuals accountable massively, okay? I did a video saying I'm burning all my bridges with all the Just Democrats, a group I formed and named to try to get them to take action on things we could actually win on, like $15 minimum wage. I burned my bridge with Bernie Sanders, forcing him to, and we did a petition, our viewers sent in videos, and it worked, and it forced Bernie's hand to have a vote on $15 minimum wage. And then we found out who the 8 Democrats were that voted against the $15 minimum wage, and we found out that those were 2 of the top allies for Joe Biden, the 2 senators from Delaware. So that was actually a force of vote that was incredibly effective in at least finding out who the bad guys are. We got no help from anyone else because they were busy with, their, as you would say, personal animus, but our audience was enough and we did it anyway. So when you say it as if I'm opposed to it, are you like, I am Phyllis?
I don't feel like that's actually holding them accountable though. When I talk about holding politicians accountable, I mean, like really holding them accountable. And some ways that you can do that is not voting for them again, not donating money to them again, protesting outside their house, protesting right there in DC, protesting about them the same way people protested outside of AOC's offices. That's what I talk about when I mean holding politicians accountable. To me, because you made a video talking about how frustrated you were, that's not holding them accountable. So, I mean, I think it's great that Bernie Sanders was willing to listen to TYT. That's nice. That's cute. I just wish that Bernie Sanders was willing to listen to the people that fought for him on the ground. And you have to ask, why is it that he was willing to listen to them and none of the other people in left independent media? Why was he willing to still come on to shows like TYT, but not other shows, left shows in independent media? Or you go on that show and you kick off the host. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little bit more tough.
Philosophically, massively in favor
with all
of
due
it.
respect, with all due respect, and people can play back the tape, nothing I said was meant as an antagonist. I think that you're personalizing this and inserting yourself into this. All I was talking about was what my feeling, I was using an example to demonstrate why I don't think that criticizing the squad is attacking the squad. And so what you're saying is you also criticize the squad. I think that's great. So we understand each other. We understand, because we've both done it, that having a critique of leftists in Congress, even if they're the best that we've got, that critique is necessary to try to maximize and push them in the direction that we think as voters and as media figures they should go. So we're actually in agreement here, and I'm not really sure what the dispute is.
Yeah, no, because you said, all right, forget what you said. You framed it as holding them accountable is attacking them. What I was trying to get to, and this sucks.
No.
Hold on.
I was saying the opposite though, Cenk. I'm saying holding them accountable is not attacking them, and you agree with me. So
yes,
what's the problem?
No, so the problem is because this is forcing me to delineate the difference. When Jimmy says in a speech, let's go to, hold on.
Jimmy?
No, I have to give you the distinction.
No, hold on. I have to complain about Jimmy Dore more. You must listen to me complain about him more. I really don't.
I have to give you the distinction between attack and hold accountable. No, Briahna, hold on. You have to understand it. When he says, let's go to AOC's house and make her afraid of us physically, that's attacking. Saying, hey, we need you to have this vote on $15 minimum wage because we actually think it can pass, and here's our strategy for it, is holding accountable.
Wait a minute. So he doesn't think that we should protest outside politicians' homes? I disagree with that. Do you see what I was saying to you about the reformist? This is the difference. They're only willing to go so far. They're not willing to hit the streets. They're not willing to do any type of mutual aid. They're not willing to tell you don't vote for them. They're not willing to tell you don't donate to them. They're reformist. They just want to reform the system. They don't actually want to change the system. This is why I continue to say this. This is why any type of movement that we have led in this country, it cannot be led by the professional class. It can't. It can't be led by people who are wealthy. It can't be led by millionaires. It can't be led by someone like Cenk Uygur because they're only willing to go so far. You have to get the people who have lost a lot. You have to get the people who know what it's like not to make $15 an hour. You have to get the people who know what it's like not to have health insurance or inadequate health insurance, the people that have medical debt, the people that have student loan debt, the people who have basically been exploited and taken advantage of by the system. Those are the people that you need to rally to have any type of movement in this country, not the professional class. I'm just keeping it real, because even the ones sometimes that have like good intentions in the beginning, and I've seen this happen multiple times, have good intentions in the beginning. As soon as things get to be a little bit too difficult, they pull away. Remember that. They pull away.
When Pramila Jayapal says, hey, let's decouple infrastructure build and build back better, we say, hey, no, that doesn't make any sense. You're going to lose Build Back Better. That's holding accountable. So there were things that were out of bounds that were attacking. So I just want to be clear with the audience and with you. Holding accountable is, we agree, is definitely not attacking. There needs to be lines that you don't cross.
So if you want to be very specific, I personally do believe that protesting in front of politicians have.
See, did you hear what he just said? Did you hear what he just said? There are certain lines that you don't cross. That's the reformist. This is exactly what I was talking about. They're only willing to go so far.
Houses is legitimate. I think it's legitimate.
I think it's legitimate. But you don't say, let's go make her afraid of us by going to her house. Finish.
When I had Chris Hedges on my show, probably last fall.
I'm sitting here thinking, and I'll get back into it, but I'm sorry, I'm sitting here thinking, what would he have said during the civil rights movement? If he was back during then, what would he have said? No, guys, I'm sorry. You can't go that far. You can't block off roadways. No. You can't do, this is too much. You can't go that far. You see the problem? Wow.
It was one of my favorite episodes ever. And he talked about the politics of fear. And he talked about how if you have a social movement and you want it to be effective, you have to have people afraid of the consequences of not listening to you. And I think that what we've seen over the course of the Biden administration, and even before, when we had the largest protest movement in American history, that was just plainly ignored and disregarded by the party that was supposed to be championing the interests of the people who were in the streets. That they weren't really afraid because ultimately there were no consequences there. And I don't mean threats of physical violence. What I mean by afraid is that there was going to be some tangible consequence to not listening to you. My argument in the summer of 2020 was there needed to be a credible campaign to withhold one's vote. Just some very clear, popular policies were committed to by Joe Biden. I think we might live in a different world where, if that had been the case. I'd say the same thing is true now over whatever election happens in 2024 and what these midterm elections coming up. And I also think it means being willing to say Nancy Pelosi, who is the most powerful woman in Congress, person in Congress, probably the most powerful Democrat in the country, she doesn't get to be Speaker of the House if she doesn't turn over some things to the progressives. They had power to do that. And before she was in office, before she was elected, AOC said, there's no reason why Nancy Pelosi should be Speaker of the House. I wouldn't vote for Nancy to be Speaker of the House. And so something very concrete that could have happened. You say it doesn't matter if Hakeem Jeffries is Speaker. It matters to Nancy Pelosi. It matters to Nancy Pelosi. And demonstrating a willingness to actually put your money where your mouth is and deeply inconvenience the establishment of the Democratic Party is a much less performative action, I would argue, than asking Bernie Sanders to have an amendment to put a $15 minimum wage back in the bill, when we all know that taking it out of the bill was the real moment of tension point, right? Because putting it back in the bill takes 60 votes. Pulling it out only takes, voted on it in the bill takes 50 votes, which is why the parliamentarian is so crucial. Diva'sDoodles has been talking about this because the exact same thing, as I'm sure you know, just happened with this latest inflation bill, where Bernie Sanders, again, the amendment king, is trying to get all of these things back in the bill, but Chuck Schumer is stripping them out because the parliamentarian said so, instead of just forcing a vote with them in, despite what the parliamentarian says, turns a 50-vote issue into a 60-vote issue and provides cover for all these Democrats to be able to say, yeah, sure, I want it back in the bill, without ever having any risk to their donor base that it's going to happen. So why am I saying all this? I'm just wanted to really make it clear. I think we are broadly in agreement. People have different tactics. I understand that Jimmy's tone is not necessarily what I choose. It's not what you choose, and it's not what you like. But I also respect that he channels a lot of the deep anger and resentment that so many people who are failing and being crushed by poverty, by medical debt, by cancer, by all kinds of ailments. Those people are looking at people like you and I, who are sitting here calmly at our desks talking about these things, in a way that can feel academic to people who are really suffering, and they see something in Jimmy. And if Jimmy is attracting a certain kind of audience and pulling certain people to the left who resonates with them.
Let me chime in here for just a second, because she touched on something that, again, we've been talking about for a long time. I've said this before. It can be a turn off when you have people, these academics, a lot of these highly professionals, the lawyers, and they're only willing to go so far in these spaces. They don't fight back the way that they could or should. And she's right. There are people looking at people like her and Cenk Uygur and saying like, look, you guys are better off than a lot of us. Why aren't you willing to fight? Why can't you understand the type of pain and frustration that we have? And I say this as someone, look, I've been on both sides. Okay. I was an academic advisor. I grew up in a middle-class family. And then when the housing crisis happened, I became poor pretty quickly. So I know what it's like to be on both sides. And I'll say this, it is something that I've often had to remind faculty that I've worked with. Sometimes when you're talking to people, sometimes it's good to just take a step back and take off your professor hat, your academic hat, and just listen to what they are saying and what they are going through, and not only talk to people who are in the same class as you. Because I appreciate the fact that they're having this discussion, but Cenk Uygur should also be having this discussion with poor people and working class people. People who are really struggling in this country financially, and not just this year, but they've been struggling for a long time. He should really talk to those people. And I don't see that. I know they probably have people that can go out on the ground to do that, but I think he should do that. I think he should get out there and talk to them too. I think Anna Kasparian should get out there and talk to them too. I think every now and then people need to leave their comfy studios. And by the way, this is not a studio. Leave their comfy studios and go out there and talk to those people. Because basically what we have happening here is podcaster talking to podcaster. And a lot of times both of them are in comfortable positions financially. They're talking about what working class people and poor people want, but they've never been in that position. So I really want to see people. This goes out to everybody. Some of you, you're a little too comfortable. I want to see some of you get up and leave your studio and go out and talk to working class and poor people. I'm sorry, but that needs to happen. That needs to happen. You need to hear from them what they're going through and what they're experiencing. Because for years, I sat back and I watched on left independent media, a lot of commentators talk about what working class and poor people want. And then when I got into this space, I realized a lot of these people are rich. And a lot of them have never been working class and don't know what it's like. So it was kind of a wake-up call to me, right? I was like, whoa, this is where the message has been coming from. Now, people can't help how they grow up, but I really do think Cenk needs to hear from those people as well. And she's trying to tell him how they feel, and he's just shaking his head, and he just said right wing. You see what I'm saying? You see, this is why I told you they don't want us to talk to people on the right when it comes to the issues, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to medical debt, things like that. They don't want us to talk to those people. You know why? Because when I've talked to them, most of the conservatives that I've talked to agree that everyone should have healthcare in this country. They don't want you to do that. They don't want you to do that. They want to keep you divided from left and right, because if you're divided left and right, you're not focusing on the class issue. You're not focusing on the class dynamic. And that includes Cenk Uygur, by the way. He does not want you to have those discussions, because then we'll start to talk about the real problem, which is the corruption in this country, which is the fact that money controls everything. The top 1%. He does not want you to do that. And let's remember here, Cenk was also a Republican before. He's constantly smearing people as right wing as though he was never on the right. Come on. Come on.
I think that's a good thing. And if people don't like that, I think they cannot go other places. I respect
pulled his
that
entire audience to the right. He pulled his, anyway, I can't bear to talk about these guys anymore. Glenn Greenwald.
But he continues, I can't bear to talk about these guys anymore. And then he starts to talk about Glenn Greenwald. Here we go.
Kissing Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones' ass is not pulling anyone to the left.
You should talk to him.
Yeah,
I think it would be a really fruitful conversation. You're both welcome on Bad Faith.
Okay.
I had, My friend Nathan Robinson had similar concerns about Glenn, which I respected, and so I had them both on to talk about it on Bad Faith, and it was one of our best
I'm not interested in their right-wing
conversations.
talking points. Okay, so let's go to our agreements. Okay.
See, you see what he's doing? I'm not interested in right-wing talking points. I do want to remind you guys, I don't know a lot about Glenn Greenwald. I've never had him on the show. But I will say one thing I do know is that Glenn Greenwald is not accepted in some of the left spaces because of some of the things that he talks about. And especially when it comes to mainstream media, right? So that's why you might see him on Fox News, but you don't see him on CNN or MSNBC. He's one of those people I think that has been blackballed when it comes to that side of media. I will say that, but I just felt like this conversation for Cenk was more of a smear campaign. Now, there's another point I want to go to here. Let me come out of here for just a second. Go back to my notes. 4222. All right. So this portion here, we're going to go to this spot here, I think is really important. Just pay attention to what's said. 42. No, we'll start it there. Shoot. I don't even know if that's all right. It's starting a little bit earlier, but oh, well, here we go.
To see, we had this conversation around 1-6 is part of the reason why people were let into the Capitol, because they had sympathetic people in the security team around the White House. That is absolutely a legitimate question to ask, if our tax dollars, our weapons are going to people who don't have our interests at heart. That is the issue. And if you think the answer is no, fine, substantiate it, talk about it, engage with the issue, and make your case. That's all
Briahna,
I'm saying. This is not my area of expertise. I'm literally not even espousing a point of view. But I think the left is stronger when we're able to talk about these things instead of just assuming that people are secretly rooting for Vladimir Putin because they have a historical perspective or what's going on the ground.
Their reporting is wrong. Their reporting is lies. Okay, and then you make it 50-50.
See, this is the problem. He's not even willing to have the conversation. He's not willing to have the discussion with those people. Instead, he's going to come in and smear them and say their reporting is lies. People can say the same thing about some of the reporting that's come out of TYT. Instead of smearing those individuals, and I challenge you, Cenk, to this, instead of smearing all those people, the Gray Zone, Glenn Greenwald, why don't you invite them on your show and have a discussion with them about it? Even if it's a debate them about it. Why don't you do that instead of smearing them? Why don't you point to these parts of these articles that they've written? If you feel this is incorrect information, why don't you point to those parts and tell them this is incorrect and this is the reason why? Why don't you just do that instead of constantly smearing them all the time? Because it's not in good faith. It's not in good faith.
50, but Briahna, I don't know if you're doing it on purpose or not, but you did, what you just did there was a sleight of hand in that conversation. You started talking about how, oh, well, there's small faction Nazis, but I don't know, does the money go into Nazis? Maybe we don't send money to Ukraine. I'm worried about defense contractors just taking that money, and I'm worried, that's why I'm worried about the spending of the money. It's corporate pork, etc., right? But you all, maybe it's going to Nazis, makes it seem like, hey, that's a 50-50 process. Well, and then you, hold on. Then you said, well, hey, I'm concerned about cops and being far right and Nazis here in America on January 6th, as if I'm like, I'm not concerned about that. I'm also concerned about that. I don't know why why did you bring that into a conversation about our disagreement?
You are seriously so oppositional. Every time I say something I believe, you interpret it as me saying you don't believe that. It's so weird. If I say my makeup brush is black, you're like, well, I also have a makeup brush. Dude, like, I'm not arguing with you. I'm trying so hard not to argue with you. Please stop trying to perceive every word out of my mouth as somehow a criticism of you or trying to undermine you. I'm sincerely trying to be here in the spirit of reparation. And it's okay. I don't necessarily feel from you right now that you have a desire to repair. It seems a little bit like point scoring, and that's, I don't know. It makes me a little sad. I don't see why there has to be this.
Look, all right, Briahna, let's go to something you did recently as an example, okay? And
so this, I think, again with him, he seems rather impatient. I feel, and I feel like he doesn't have much tolerance here. And I don't think he intended to. I think this was, again, an opportunity for him to come in and perform. I felt like he was really over the top.
So you talk, and I think it's a good example. So you talked about how when Marjorie Taylor Greene says defund the FBI, hey, maybe that's not such a bad point, okay? So now that's a good place where, again, subtlety and nuance are gonna be really, really important, okay? So if I saw your segment where you were talking about, hey, look, the FBI has this terrible history of oppressing the powerless in favor of the powerful. That's totally true. We totally agree, okay? And if you're getting agreement from the right wing, now this is important, but in an earnest way, about police reform, law enforcement reform, what did we talk about? What did I say earlier? Take yes for an answer, right? So far, okay, that's good, agreed, right? But then I think it's incumbent to clarify, but the right wing doesn't actually mean it. It's not like you're gonna get Marjorie Taylor, hold on, let me finish and then you respond. It's not like you're gonna get Marjorie Taylor Greene to go, oh my God, you're so right. We should do police reform. These cops are being so abusive towards African Americans. No, what she's trying to say is if we get in charge, we're not gonna let them hold us accountable. We're gonna destroy rule of law by getting rid of anyone at the FBI who doesn't agree with us politically. Don't you see that?
So if you watch my clip, the first sentence and also the last paragraph is all about exactly that. So yeah, I agree. Okay,
great. But then I'm gonna show a clip, a tweet of Marjorie Taylor Greene agreeing with you, and then I wanna get your reaction to it. So I'm not doing this without you. We didn't do it on the show and go haha or anything like that. And in fact, I'm genuinely curious what your reaction to it. So
this guy is such an actor. Like this is, oh my God. I don't see how people can take this seriously. I really don't.
Let's look at that. So here, in response to you saying Marjorie Taylor Greene is right about the FBI, she says our government has become an institution that protects and serves the elites while the people suffer under the American last ruling class. We must defund the FBI, dismantle the Department of Justice, and gut the agencies of political biases and persecutions. I believe in the people. So what I see there, and I'm curious what you see, is her pretending that the right wing is populist and that they're doing this on behalf of the American people. When in reality, what she's saying is, if we get back in charge, there ain't gonna be no rule of law. We're gonna take out the Department of Justice, we're gonna take out the FBI, then they're gonna run roughshod. I do not agree to that at all. So
see, that's what it's about. So he does not agree with abolishing the FBI. You see that? Well, I told you, he's a reformist.
I'm curious what you're taking on this.
I think it's pretty funny since like millions of thousands of leftists, she also seems to have not watched the video because I doubt that she would retweet a video where she was called a broken clock who's only right twice a day and a bad faith actor. So I am a co-host at Rising, and Rising's audience is a much more conservative audience than what you have here at TYT or what I have at Bad Faith. And when you're speaking to people who are not there for you, Robbie's been on the show much longer than I have, and the audience is largely there for him. They're very libertarian in their bent. They are anti-establishment. They're frustrated with corporate parties, but they've definitely leaned right, especially on cultural issues. I find that I'm able to get more engagement with the video and more engagement with my points that I think are substantive. I spent most of my video talking about communism. Now the FBI has been an enemy of the left. To meet them where they are and say, look, the left is as concerned, nay, more concerned about the issue than the right. And here's the real people who are advocating for this and not in a self-interested way. And the point I make at the end of the video is, I don't believe Marjorie Taylor Greene is acting in good faith, but I believe you might be. And to the extent that you, the audience, is acting in good faith, here's what we should do, come over to the left. I'm addressing conservative audiences or kind of partyless audiences, people who are quote unquote persuadable voters. I'm not.
And that's the problem, because people like Cenk and like the TYT, that network, they want you to speak to the Democratic audience, particularly progressive audience. They want you to speak to that base. And that's the problem. And that's why they'll come out and they'll smear people like RBN. They'll smear people like me. They'll smear anybody that's telling people this message that, listen, we need to talk to everybody and not just people that are on the left. That's not the same message that is coming from TYT, obviously. And so people who make those comments like we do, they consider us to be a problem. Obviously, Jimmy Dore has the largest audience out of those of us that say those things. So they're definitely going to come after him. And I really do believe, and I've said this before, whether you like Jimmy or not, I really do believe they're trying to take that down. They really want to take that down because he's grown. He made it over a million subs. And some people have been trying to get there for years. So they see him as a threat. Why do you think they keep smearing him, calling him right wing? Let's be real, really quick. Can I get back to the point? Who was at the March for Medicare for All last year? Cenk Uygur or Jimmy Dore? Oh, that's right. Who actually wanted people to force the vote against Nancy Pelosi as speaker to push for Medicare for All? Was that Cenk Uygur or Jimmy Dore? No, that's right. Do you see the difference? You see the problem? They don't like that. They don't like that. Over 1 million people watched the Force the Vote town hall. Just imagine if TYT would have jumped on board with that strategy as well, it would have been even more. And then maybe then the squad would have felt more pressure to do something. But no. I believe that network is here to run cover for the squad. Now they'll still criticize them. Don't get me wrong. But I believe that's what they're here to keep you in the Democratic Party. And until I see something different, I'll continue having that sentiment.
Not doing this for Marjorie Taylor Greene's notice or interest. I'm doing because she is in fact obviously a bad faith actor, but you have to address the people who see her as acting in good faith. That's comms. Just because I know her and she is a bad actor, but some of the people in the audience are people who genuinely believe what she's saying. So the point is to say, okay, let me just accept on face value that you really are into this. Let me tell you what the FBI really is, and let's develop a plan on my own turf about how to address this issue. I talked to the boys over at the Vanguard earlier today, and they raised some interesting points about how well, if she is able to set the agenda, her version of getting rid of the FBI is going to be all about protecting, yes, elite power, the way that the FBI has always done, and avoiding accountability. I think that's a really legitimate point. That is why instead of, I don't know, spending a long day attacking me on the internet, what I would love for leftists to be doing is to think critically and get our historians and our theorists together and think critically about what it would look like to either restructure or abolish the FBI so that it really did become about accountability for elites instead of harassing leftists and other marginalized groups as it has done historically.
There is actually a documentary on Hulu right now. It's called MLK FBI. I haven't started watching that yet, but I believe it's fairly recent that they put that on there. I definitely want to check that out because they've come after so many people. They came after MLK, they came after Malcolm X, they came after the Black Panthers, they came after Fred Hampton. Like, why would you be in support? If you're a leftist per se, why would you support that? Like, why would you support that group? Any of the alphabet groups, to be honest with you. That just doesn't make any sense to me unless you're not really a leftist. Maybe one of the ones that people say are cosplaying. I don't know, but I just don't, you can't switch my mind on that one. Now there's another point here, and then I'm going to move on from this. There's something else said here that I do want to get into as well. Doobie-doobie-doo.
That, but he agrees with the process of the convention. So we agree on that. What I'm worried about, and that's what I'm trying to understand, that's like maybe the unifying theme of this conversation, is that when people go on Tucker Carlson and they're not challenging him, all they're doing is agreeing, that it looks like they're trying to pull the left wing to the right and get them to agree to other Tucker Carlson positions, white nationalism, immigrants are dirty, they're gonna replace us, etc. And that they never clarify. So
then why not have that conversation with those people? Why are you having that conversation with her? I don't think she's been on Tucker Carlson, not to my knowledge. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've seen her on Tucker Carlson. So my thing is, I just feel like he's taking out a lot of his frustration from other people, other commentators on the left, and he's taking it out on her. I don't understand the point of that. Again, there's something else I have to say, and I've been mentioning this before. I don't understand how this space is weird. This space is very weird. I don't understand how people in this space who at one point or another had each other's phone information, all that stuff, whether it's email, whatever, they know how to reach each other. I guess it's just something I don't understand. Why not just contact them and have that discussion? Why not just send them an email, text them or something and have this discussion? It's very weird to me when I came into this space that people who were friends per se would rather get on a stream and bash their friend instead of or whether they're friends or not, but obviously this is someone that you had a close relationship with. Why not just pick up the phone and call them? Why not just text them or send them an email or something? I just don't understand that. It's very bizarre to me. I don't know. Let's go back in.
And it looks to us, and that's why I called him the fake left. And I will, having had this nuanced, important conversation with you, I will take you out of that category. I understand you're trying to come at it from good faith. I will not take the others that you take in good faith at all. And that's
so he's saying that he's going to take her out of that category. Okay, so is he the spokesperson for the left? Is that what this was about? Is the reason why he wanted her to come on this show was for him to decide whether or not he was going to take back what he said? We have to get TYT's stamp of approval. Is that what this is about? Because it seemed like to me, I can tell you from my own experience, it seemed like to me that was part of the problem that people had against us during the marches for Medicare for All, and people had against us when we did the General Strike Summit last year on RBN. Because it was those people and their mouthpieces who were attacking us as if we didn't get the TYT majority report stamp and seal of approval to do what we wanted to do. There's a lot of territories in this space. There's a lot of ego. This came across to me as very egotistic. It's so weird. It's weird to me. And I think you might be able to see it as an audience member, but when you are actually a part of it, you see it even more. You see the things that go on behind the scenes. You see what people do to each other. People can be really dirty, even some of the ones that you like. So I feel like he's saying the quiet part out loud. We have to approve of it. Did we okay you to talk to that person? Did we okay you so-and-so to go on Tucker Carlson? Did we okay? You see where this is coming from?
A fine and healthy disagreement. But the question is, I'm deeply concerned that they're helping the Tucker Carlsons of the world pull people on the left to the right wing. Are you not concerned about that?
Yeah, sometimes. And I spoke to Glenn directly about it on my show with Nathan Robinson, and we had a good conversation about it. And he acknowledged that he could do more to push back and to make his own positions clear. That was, about a year ago, not quite. And I think it's probably worth revisiting the conversation with him. And so I'll shoot him an email after I get off of here. And I invite you to that conversation if you're interested.
No, I'm not, because I don't think he's in good faith at all.
See?
So
you see that? This is what I'm telling you. This was not about, for him, he did not go into this with good intentions, I think. He was not really trying to bridge any type of divide. He wants to keep things the way that they are. That was multiple times she said during this stream that I can set this up for you for maybe you guys should have a conversation. And he says no. He's not even willing to have the conversation, but he's willing to continue to smear them. I sincerely hope, and I don't know about this. Like, it's weird. I sincerely hope, and I say this as one of the other Black women in this space, I sincerely hope that Briahna Joy Gray didn't feel like she had to get Cenk Uygur's seal of approval here. I sincerely hope she did not feel like that was something that she had to do. Because for me, I tell you, I could care less. I could care less. But it was very obvious to me, I don't really think anything's going to come of that in terms of bridging a divide. I think Cenk still wants to be divisive. I don't think, he made it very clear he doesn't want to have those discussions with any of those people that were mentioned. So this is what happens when, and I've said it before, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get any type of real movement with the rich people in this space. You're not going to get it. I'm telling you guys, I've been behind the scenes. I see it. I see what happens. I see them blocking people. I see them collectively deciding that certain people are not allowed to be spoken to. These are all the things you guys don't get to see that I do get to see. That's why I told you they're not serious about any type of real movement. I feel like a lot of this is fake, and I feel like a lot of it's just for attention seeking. It's really weird to me. But I will say, I appreciate them having the discussion, but I think that Cenk came in 100% with bad faith. I don't think he really intended to want to change the way that he's doing things. And I don't think he wants there to be some type of unity per se. I think he likes it the way it is. And is that a problem? Yeah. But what are you going to do about it? Because I've told myself, many months ago that I'm not going to care how people feel about me, like in this space. And I'm going to continue doing what I do. So interesting discussion. I'm going to get to some of these super chats. I see a lot of comments. Thank you for the super chat, Female Rage. I can feel my BP or my blood pressure spiking already watching this. I'm sorry, Female Rage. Ashura says, what a liar. Anna started it by smearing Door. Yeah, let's not even get back into that again, because that's a whole nother thing. Thank you for the super chat. Super chat puts the mouse. The most telling thing is how both sides already knew she wouldn't bring it up for a vote. Had she, there would be no threat to her speakership. That's right. Yipper99 says Anna is a fake leftist. She admires Madeleine Albright. Yeah, I remember that. We've talked about that one. Leroy says people like Cenk always want Black women to explain for white men. Ouch. Ouch, Leroy. Thank you for the super chat, Machirius39. Cenk is obnoxious. He doesn't know what nuance is. Yeah, I just feel like it's all performative, man. I don't trust many people. I'm sorry. Greg Bruce says, interesting how Cenk was more respectful to David Duke than he's being to Bree. Ouch. Thanks for the super chat, Beffer. Do you think it's the egoism or classism or counterpro that causes the infighting, or all equally? I think it's all of them, to be honest. And I will also say, I think in the beginning, not as many people had the ego. Like when you're first starting out, a lot of them I think had the ego. But I think as some people started to grow and they really started to make a lot of money, and the 20 million coming from Jeffrey Katzenberg, that can kind of do something to your ego if you don't check yourself, right? Thank you for this as well, Beffer. The sun not coming up tomorrow is more likely than BJG caring what the dude thinks of her. I hear you.